All right, today I'm excited to finally be making a video about shipping bare root trees. I'm at the workstation, which is just the tailgate of my truck right now, and I want to show you guys a little bit about how I go about shipping out trees to people all across the East Coast, the Midwest, and some of the other states. Today is a beautiful day for shipping. The high is about 60 degrees. I don't know exactly what temperature it is right now. It's definitely not 60, somewhere between probably like 50 and 60. And so I'm out here. This is my kind of makeshift workstation. So things you're going to need, first of all, you're going to need your bare root trees. You're going to need a workstation. That could be a table, the back of the truck. I mean, you could do this on the ground. It's much more comfortable if you have something that's up kind of at waist height to do the work. You could be in a greenhouse, right, with a little work table would probably be good, or in a shed. It could look a lot of different ways. You're going to need some sort of medium to pack the trees in. I've got a mix right here that I'll talk about in a little bit, but you could also just wrap them in damp newspaper. But you need something to keep the tree roots from drying out. And you need some sort of, I like to use plastic to kind of wrap around that medium, right? Which we'll get into in a second. I'm just reusing old grocery bags that they give out to everyone here by the thousands, it seems. There's just a plethora of these things lying around. You could use any sorts of old scrap plastic. This could be maybe old brown paper bags. You could go and buy new sheets of plastic if you really wanted to. There's all sorts of things this could be. All of this is very flexible and you can get creative. So I want to run you through the process of what I do first is I get all the trees into bags and in their medium. And then I'll take a bundle down. Once I get enough to fill a box, I'll go down to the house where I have the boxes. And that's kind of the last thing you're going to need. You're going to need boxes. You're also going to need some form of tape. I've got masking tape and packaging tape. You're going to need some sort of nursery marker or pen. And then if you're printing labels, you'll need a label printer. If you're just writing the labels, you can go to the post office and pay the shipping at the post office. I can talk about that whole process towards the end when we get the boxes. That's kind of the overlay, or the layout, if you will. The first step, you got to go over and get your trees. So I look at my orders on my phone and I see, okay, I'm going to pack an order to somebody. They ordered, maybe they ordered 3 hickories, right? Some bitternut hickories here, and maybe they ordered a few persimmons or a few butternuts. And I'll come and I'll get the trees out of storage. I've talked about healing in trees, tree storage over the wintertime in other videos. This could also look a lot of different ways, but this year all my trees are healed into these pots with wood chips and compost and organic matter just for temporary storage. You can see all the pots are labeled. So I'll come and pull the trees out, and then I come over here and I get the trees and I give them a soak. These are persimmons. If you're not familiar with persimmons, the roots are always jet black like that. That's not concerning. And some other tree species, if you saw black roots, that could mean rot. But the persimmon roots just always look jet black. So I get them soaking. Okay, let's get them rehydrated. Now I'm going to pause here before I go into the rest of my process and just say, the way that I'm doing this, there's a lot of room for increased efficiency. I would say my setup this year is way more efficient than it was last year, but already I've got a lot of plans for increasing efficiency and just making it more comfortable of a workflow for next year. But I want to show you guys the point in the process I'm at right now, and let you know, at any stage that you're at, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you just want to ship out 10 orders of trees for your first year, you can do it. You don't have to have this perfect fancy shipping setup. You can just work on the back of a truck or a little table. There's a lot of different ways you can make this happen. Ultimately, you want to cut down on walking to get stuff. So the trees are over there. I want to be working as close to the trees as possible. That's why, hence the truck here. Now, in future years, if I had a covered area protected from rain with a table like right there, that would be even better. And then all my boxes, because I don't want them to get wet, they're all in the house. So I guess I could carry the boxes up here, but my tailgate's a little wet. It just rained. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to have to carry bundles of trees down to the house, box them up, and then get the boxes in the truck to go to the post office. But okay, the next step, back to the process. This could all be, the more you can consolidate and have less walking, have all your materials kind of in one spot, the better. This is your final chance to inspect the roots, right? So you go through, make sure there's no, pieces of wood chip or soil that you don't want to ship. Try to get them as bare as possible. There's always a little bit seems to be hanging on. You want to inspect for any damages, right? This is just your last time to look at these roots. I do a pretty good inspection when I pull the trees out of the beds and sort them and grade them, but this is your last chance to look at them. Then you want to go and I just kind of rip these bags down the middle, put a little strip of my medium right in here, and then we're going to plop the trees right on. A quick note on the medium, this could be a lot of different things. Right here is a mix of 3 different things that I had laying around. I had an old bag of peat moss, which I don't like to use because I don't like to support the clear cutting of the peat forests, the peat bogs. But there's also sawdust in here and cocoa coir. Any organic medium that is going to be able to hold some moisture will work. I try to use things that are going to be mostly inert, you know, certain states, and this is something we can talk about when we go inside and look at the boxes and the labels. As a nursery, if you're trying to ship out to multiple states, there are restrictions on where you can ship soil, what species of trees can be shipped to different states. It's relatively easy to navigate these regulations, but bare root trees are typically easier to ship places because there's no soil attached. So the risk of sending potential pathogens or pests or things that people don't want is very low. So because I want to utilize that benefit of bare root, I can't ship them in soil or compost. I've got to ship them in this like sawdust, cocoa coir, something that doesn't have a whole lot of life growing in it. It's the only time I really want less life involved with my trees. You want to get this just slightly damp. You can see that I can squeeze this. No drops are coming out, but it's kind of holding its shape. If 1 or 2 drops came out, that'd be okay. You don't want to squeeze this and have like 5 or 10 drops of water come out. That's too wet. You also don't want it to be just crumbly dry. See, here's a piece of bark that I'm going to filter out. That was probably from the sawdust. So anyway, we get our roots in here. Now look, they can be kind of wrapped up, bunched up like this to go into shipping. They don't have to be perfectly all, you know, laying out. Like these want to be much longer. It's okay for shipping purposes to have them bundled up for short term. So I just get them kind of consolidated. I want to make sure there's not a ton of pressure. You know, a root like this, I don't want it bent all the way like that. The bigger it is, the less bend you want to have. But these fine roots, you can have them kind of bent up like that. And then we're just going to grab some of this, sprinkle it on here just to lightly cover these roots. It doesn't have to be 100% coverage. We just want to be able to trap the moisture in and kind of insulate these guys a little bit. There might be some cold or some hot temperatures in shipping, so just kind of snug them in just like so. I do like to make sure this transition point where we go from root into shoot, that is within the plastic. I don't want this part above the plastic. Now I'm going to use 2 hands for this, so it's going to be hard to show, but I'm basically just going to wrap this plastic around like this and kind of just twist the whole thing. I want it to be wrapped up pretty tight, and then we're going to tape it shut. At the end, it'll look like this bag right here that has been all wrapped up. This has pawpaws in it, and you can see I just put a piece of tape here, piece of tape here, tape around the top so that no soil spills out, and then I just write on it with a nursery pen, label what it is. So I've got a whole bunch of bundles of trees here. We're going to do this one and then go down and box it up. That's really all it takes to get the trees wrapped up. And like I said, this could look a lot of different ways. You could have old pieces of plastic, you know, if you have like feed bags, animal feed bags, stuff like that, you just cut them into rectangular-ish pieces. You know, you could use those and just wrap the tree roots up in those. This could look a lot of different ways. You just want to get the tree roots, like I said, encased in some sort of medium, not too dry, not too wet. And then I like to use this, you know, old scrap plastic because it's going to hold that moisture in. And the masking tape is relatively cheap, does a good job of wrapping it up. You could use other tapes. It doesn't have to be masking tape. Really, none of this has to be exactly like how I'm doing it. Okay, so it's a little hectic down here as well, but we're now down. You see, there's the truck up here. So we're at the house. I've got a few different boxes laying out here in the trees. This is where we're going to do our packaging. Now, look, if you're doing this and you're only doing a few trees, you can certainly reuse boxes. I actually even still reuse boxes at this stage, but I don't have access to enough reused boxes. I've got to actually buy some brand new boxes in order to do this. I'm still trying to figure out what the best box brand and size and design. You know, these are just standard rectangular tubes, whatever you want to call them. I get them from Uline online. You know, they'll send you a flat of them. I've got a few different sizes. So we've got the 60 by 60 by 6. This is for very large orders or very large long trees. This one is, I think it's 4 feet. Yeah, 48 by 4 by 4. I've got some 36 by 4 by 4. So you can experiment with different sizes and see what works for you. I'm also not sure what the best tape is to use for this. You know, I've used this, I always call this frog tape, painting tape. masking tape. You know, I use packaging tape. This is probably the appropriate tape for this, but this is the most expensive stuff. So again, you know, if you're only going to do a few boxes, just go out and get a roll. If you're going to do a bunch of these, it definitely pays to buy in bulk all of your shipping supplies. So now we're just going to start filling our trees into the box. You can see it helps to have lots of scrap pieces of paper and packaging stuff to kind of act as cushioning. So I have a piece here. I've got a piece underneath here. This again doesn't have to be perfect. They're already wrapped in the sawdust is insulation. The box is cushioning. The goal here as I pack things in is by the end of the process, I want this to be so tight. Hold on one second. So tight that when I take the box and I do this, I don't want to hear this moving. When I do this, I don't want to hear anything shuffling this way. I want everything to be kind of snugged in place so that if the box gets jostled around, the trees are not going to move a whole lot. Okay, so if you're going to print out labels, you're going to probably need a computer. You might be able to do this from your phone with a Bluetooth app, but I have this little label printer here. This was like $40, $50. If you're going to be shipping a lot, it's very nice to have something that prints out the labels. There's no ink involved. It's like a laser printer. It just takes these little things and runs them through. And I don't want to show you guys anybody's name or address, so I'm not going to print any labels. Anyway, having that label printer saves me a ton of time. You know, the fact that I have an online store, I use Shopify, which maybe I've talked about this before, I can't recall, but plenty of online platforms will do this. You know, someone places an order, they put in their address information, and then I can just go through my Shopify account, pay for a shipping label, and print it out. And so the postage is paid. I just take that label and stick it on. They're like sticky paper. We're getting some wind gusts coming in. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. It's sticky paper. It goes on the box super easily, and it saves a lot of time. On a smaller scale, you can certainly handwrite labels. I've done a lot of this in the past. You can write right on the box. What I used to do to make sure that it was legible and not going to get like rubbed off is I would actually get like an index card or a scrap piece of paper, write the label, and then use clear packaging tape to tape that onto the box. So I've done that plenty in the past. The downside of that, other than it takes longer to write out the labels by hand, is when you go to the post office, you now have to wait in line and pay for postage for each individual thing. They have to measure it and weigh it. I plug in all the dimensions for my box on my Shopify thing before I print out the label and pay for the postage inside just through my card. And then I can go to the post office and just drop those on the counter and walk out. I don't have to wait in line. I don't have to pay. It's just ready to go. So for a lot of boxes, it's faster if you can print labels. If you don't have a way to print labels through your website, if you're taking orders online, you can also go to USPS. I use USPS, the United States Postal Service. You could use UPS or FedEx or whatever, but USPS has a click and ship thing on their website online, so you can print a label out, pay for and print a label through USPS directly. But anyway, those are some options. So I've got this box taped up. I've got it labeled. I'm going to go back up and just keep packing trees. One other thing I didn't mention is you are going to want to have a scale so that you can weigh the packages. If you're going to print your label out, you have to know how much they weigh. You'll also need to know the dimensions, so tape measure. And then just another note on boxes. I have a few of these left over from last year where the way that this box comes shipped, it only opens on this end and the other end. There's no way to open it long ways like those other boxes I was showing. Those open long ways, like this part opens. These are sturdier, I find, but these are much harder to squeeze trees into because you can only access from the narrow end. Those boxes are a little bit flimsy, but it's much easier. You have much more access to get the trees all tucked in when you have this whole length open. So I'm still trying to figure out, there's other boxes I have not tried. So leave in the comments if you have any experience shipping trees with boxes, what you like. I'm curious to try some new stuff. All right, well, it's a new day. I'm still packing up trees here behind me down by the house, and I had some more thoughts that I wanted to share with you guys, specifically in reference to these boxes that I mentioned that only are open on the tops, not the long side. They're only open on the small ends. So I have some thoughts on these. As I mentioned before, these types of boxes are more rigid, and I was saying they're more difficult to pack. I think I found a way that actually makes them kind of easy to pack. I'm actually starting to like these more than I was previously. So what I've leaned towards doing is, say I have a pack of trees here like this. This is spice bush, and I want to pack them up. The problem is that this is narrow, and if I stick it in here, it'll wiggle around. And if I just take this and I slide it all the way down in there, it's hard to reach my hands in and squeeze a bunch of packaging material around it without crushing the stems up here, okay? Because it's a long box, it's dark, it's skinny. My arm hardly fits all the way down there. So what I do instead is I take rolls of newspaper. This doesn't have to be newspaper. This could be whatever you're using for packaging material. I happen to have a seemingly endless supply of this from my parents who still read the news in this format. It's also a really good fire starter though, so we hold on to a lot of it for kindling. Anyway, I roll up a few rolls, one on either side of the roots, one on either side of the stems, sometimes a third roll if I need to, and then I wrap all of this in another sheet of paper and tape it like this. So inside of here are honey locust trees that I wrapped up. I don't even think you can see the stems. That I wrapped up using this method, right? Laying this out and then wrapping around them in newspaper. And then this can easily slide into here. I'm not damaging the stems at all. They're nice and protected from bouncing around, and then I can just crumble up a few pieces of newspaper to shove in this end. This box is much quicker and easier to seal. There's a whole lot less taping involved in doing it this way, and like I said, these boxes are more sturdy. So that's one thing that I think is important to consider. I'm about to buy some more boxes. This is the last of the other style that I have here. I might just get more of these. Anyway, still very open to thoughts, what you guys are doing shipping wise. The other thing is, you know, if I had multiple trees going in one box, you could still do that with this setting. You would just do this and then tape them all, you know, do the same thing, wrap the newspaper around and tape them so they're kind of held in this position together, slide the whole package into the box. Whereas again, if we're working with these long boxes, I'm opening the whole box, I'm placing multiple things in one by one and then jamming and packing material around them. It's just a different method depending on, like I said, what box you're using. And again, the distinction is at first glance, I was thinking that the longer open boxes are easier to pack because I can access all the trees until the very last moment when I seal the box shut. Whereas this, as soon as I put the trees in this box, it's very hard to access them and make any adjustments, right? But like I said, the flip side is that these boxes that open long ways, it's a ton of tape. It's a lot of, first of all, you're spending a lot of money on tape. It's also a lot of time taping stuff and making sure the box is sealed shut. So again, just some thoughts. You guys know I love going into the details on all of this stuff. And so I felt like I wanted to share that little evolution that, in my thought, that's happened just in the past few days of shipping this year. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to talk about is something I actually mentioned at the beginning of the video, but this whole dealing with the regulations of what states can you and can you not ship to. So as a licensed nursery, right, I'm a licensed nursery in Virginia, I have to abide by all the state rules. And every state has a different set of rules for what plants can come into the state, what plants cannot come into the state, what sorts of soil, all these sorts of things. You know, there's rules out there that we have to abide by since we're a licensed nursery. So I am not an expert in all of these regulations. You should definitely do your own research, but I just want to show you what I do. And this is basically what was told to me by the state nursery inspection people who came out and inspected me. And it's pretty simple. It sounds overwhelming dealing with rules and regulations always. You know, I feel like the implication is that that's always going to be complicated, but this is really not that bad. All you have to do is there's a website called Plant Board. I'm going to have it up here on the screen. And on that website, there's a PDF for each state. So say you get an order from Tennessee. You'd click on Tennessee, open the PDF. They're typically very short. And, you know, whatever species you're going to ship, I just hit Control F and look and see if there's any restrictions on those species and what other requirements they might have for shipments coming into that state. Most things are okay to ship bare root. There are a few exceptions. You know, there's some states I can't ship black walnuts and hickories and butternuts and all these sorts of things too. I don't grow citrus, but there's certainly certain restrictions on where citrus can and cannot be shipped to and from. So there's certain things you got to be aware of, but I just handle it on a case-by-case basis. Most of my orders are within the little cluster of states around me that I'm very familiar with. But when I do get orders that are outside of that range, you know, I've got to do some figuring out of what's going on. And so that's what I do. I just go to Plant Board and, you know, do a little bit of looking and reading.